This is the Rebel HR Podcast, the podcast about all things innovation in the people space. I'm Kyle Rode. Let's start the show. Welcome back, Rebel HR community. Extremely excited to continue to be live at the Iowa State SHRM Conference. We are here with Jamie Lewis-Smith, who will be speaking at this conference. We're going to be talking all about leadership. So, Jamie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
So, Jamie, tell us a little bit about what you do.
So I am the CEO of Pixel Leadership Group, which is a firm of nerdy but fun executive coaches, data analysts, data geeks, I guess, we like to say. And we help organizations to bridge the gap between science and the practice of leadership. And as a result, we have really great, thriving employees.
I love it. I love the descriptor, nerdy but fun. I feel like that's a lot of
nerdy.
HR.
We're not sure if we're fun. We hope we're fun.
Hey, sometimes it's aspirational, right? That's okay. It's okay. We got Patrick Moran with us too here. Welcome, Patrick.
Kyle. And where are you guys out of?
We are based at, we're actually a virtual first company. Oh. So our headquarters is outside of Cleveland, Ohio, but we have coaches and consultants around the country.
Awesome.
Great question.
So, Jamie, you are going to be speaking today. Tell us about what your topic is and why that's a topic you focus on.
So I'm going to be talking about coaching, the great reset hack you need. And I am talking about that because I like to think of myself as a coaching evangelist. I don't know. I want everybody to understand the power of coaching and why it is so important for organizations. It's one thing that if an organization can really embrace this, they can change everything. I feel so passionate about it. You can change your managers. You can change employee engagement. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Absolutely. I think coaching is one of those things that when I first started in the career a number of years ago, it was kind of like a buzzword, right? Like, It's like, make sure you're out there coaching, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like talent became a big buzzword, and we got rid of personnel and turned it into HR. But I think what's interesting is over the years we've seen coaching become much more prominent and much less of a buzzword. So I'm curious, as you look at coaching, what does that actually mean to you? How do you define coaching in an organization?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because what I find in my work with organizations is that coaching is often misused. Right. It is oftentimes confused with mentoring. So, a key differential between mentoring and coaching is that mentoring is when you use your own experiences, your own kind of perspective to give advice, whereas coaching is more of a process of one individual, the coach, facilitating another person's thinking and problem solving and action process. Right. So it's a very different things, but they're very easily confused. I also hear coaching often used, unfortunately, for when we are having difficult conversations or punitive conversations. Yep. And in those organizations, then coaching is seen as a scary, terrible thing. I don't want to have a coaching conversation because that means I'm in trouble, right?
Right.
So
right.
I'm very concerned when I hear that in an organization.
Well, I think it's fascinating because just using the term coaching for me, it brings back the memories of my track coach who would scream at me and be like, I yell because I love you.
Yes.
And it's like, I don't know that we want that necessarily. So it's that's my context.
It does make sense with coaching becoming like a negative connotation. Like you just relate to that because I have to have a coaching session with my boss, or we need to have a coaching session with our team. It's like, oh, what'd they do wrong?
Right.
What'd they screw up?
Yeah.
And it's like, how do we change that dynamic?
Absolutely. It is not a process that is about punishment whatsoever. It's about helping another individual to think, to explore, to come to new realizations, to help them to figure out what it's going to take for them personally to take action and to change, whatever that means for them, right? And so it's a very positive process. But unfortunately, again, when we talk about coaching as a punitive thing, it's usually we're not talking about coaching at all. We just are using that to soften that difficult conversation.
It's actually performance management, right? Not coaching in that context.
Right.
And I think the words that we use, especially in HR, really matter. So if you're using that word in your organization, it's a pretty big red flag, right?
Absolutely. Again, I've run into too many organizations that have used that just as a way to soften, difficult performance conversations.
I mean, it does sound better. Like instead of telling you that you screwed up, I'm quote coaching you to change your quote mindset when you screwed up.
Absolutely.
So for those of us, I think in human resources, a lot of times we're supposed to be the experts in this, right? And a lot of times unfairly, right? I didn't go to school to figure out how to be a coach. I figured it out by being a bad coach and then, modifying behavior. So for those of us that are struggling with this, or maybe this is just something that's new or uncomfortable, what are some things that we can do to make coaching a more comfortable process for human resources professionals?
Yeah. So when it comes to coaching, the first thing is in some ways, coaching is awesome. And that's because you don't really have to know anything. You just have to know how to listen and how to be present, right? I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but and that can be difficult though for many folks as they're trying to coach. They really want to get in there. They know, especially when you're in HR, you know so much about the organization and the people. It's really tempting to get in there and want to start advising and giving, direction or ideas. And really, when you're coaching, it's about letting that other person to explore, asking a lot of questions, being very present, listening deeply, and challenging them to push them to think and to solve their own problems. And, again, I think for HR folks, the biggest challenge there, I think they have all the skills. It's putting aside what they already know about the organization and that kind of draw to want to get in there and solve the problem.
I'm just going to be honest right now. I feel like I'm getting coached right now. Thank you, Jamie. You are very present and like you're helping me to think about my mindset as I think about coaching. This is like a really meta experience right now. So nice work. Nice work being present.
How do you have organizations how do you gain that credibility as you come in from the outside? They know they have a problem. They know they need to fix it, but they don't know how. They bring you in. How does that translate down to the employees?
Yeah. So I find that there's an advantage in some ways when you are external, when they're bringing you in, because generally they've sought you out because you have a reputation and you've, proven your results in some ways. I think that it's somewhat more challenging when you're internal. Again, as HR, you're there to help, and you really oftentimes you want to help people to be more effective, or you want to help them to grow. And yet there can be not always the most positive reputation of HR in an organization, right?
We literally just talked about that with our last guest.
Yeah. And how do you change that for folks in HR? How do you shift that to say, I'm actually here, I want to help you grow, and I'm trying to help create a positive experience for you, right?
Well, it's funny because it evokes the image of the the corporate raider that comes in and they're like, I'm corporate and I'm here to help, right? Right as they're writing your termination paper, right? I do think it's one of those areas where if we can get really good at it in human resources and model the behavior that we need our leaders to adhere to or exhibit, it can be a little bit of a game changer. So give me an example of an organization, and you don't have to use names for, client anonymity, but I'm curious, give us an example of an organization that has that figured out, that has really kind of embedded that within their culture, and ultimately what has the result been?
Yeah, I'll use a name. I don't think that they'll mind because they go out and they talk about it. I work with Cisco, the tech company, just to be clear, because there's a couple of Ciscos out there. And they
not the singer of the 1990s hit, the thong song. Just to be clear,
yeah, not that
he
one.
is not. I mean, maybe he's a good coach, but he's not actively working with you. Okay,
not that one. Yeah. But they really haven't figured out. They they offer coaching to pretty much every people leader in the organization, and folks that aren't even in people leadership still can access it. They show that they value it by giving this resource to everybody. They are out there talking about it. Their leaders, their senior leaders are championing it. They're talking about the value of it. They're doing it themselves. I think it's just been very much infused into their culture. And so then you can see the ripple effects, of course.
Sure.
They're very frequently one of the, best places to work out there and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's fascinating about that as a case study is they are in one of the, quite frankly, the most competitive market as it relates to talent.
Yes, they
and
are.
that is actually their competitive advantage, right? If they lose their talent, they don't have the
Right.
ability to succeed.
100%.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, they're in tech. Tech is a
Yeah.
tough place to be in terms
Yep.
of talent right now. They are
Yep.
fighting, over talent across all the big ones. But they are such a wonderful place. And that's what I hear. I've worked with more than 150 leaders, I think it is now, at Cisco and one-on-one. And over and over again, it's the culture, it's the people,
Yeah.
it's the care that the organization really cares about them, and they invest in their people, and they want to help people to grow, and that makes all the difference in attracting and retaining. The folks are there forever. They'll be there for 10, 15, 20 years. That's not uncommon, which
That is unheard of.
unheard of in tech.
Yeah.
Completely unheard of in tech. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's I think that's fascinating, but probably the bigger point there is every employer says that, right? Like, this is the best place to work. We all love our people. We love our but what they've done is they've actually put in a system so that actually happens through coaching in order for them to be successful.
Yeah. They were intentional. They've been doing this for years now, which again, they're reaping the benefits for sure, but they've been very intentional about this is what we need in order to get the talent and to compete. And they very much are reaping the benefits of that after a number of years of doing it.
Absolutely. So we are ending our time together. I'm curious to ask you, what is the one or two key takeaways that you want people attending this conference, listening to your session, to walk away with?
I think that the one or two things, well, number one, your managers are the most powerful lever of change and culture in your organization and of the employee experience. And so in order to get the best for your employees and create the best outcomes for your organization, you need to focus on them, help them to grow. So that is two ways. Give them the skills to be good coaches. And number two, give them coaching so that they can really amplify and accelerate their skill development.
Coach the coaches.
Yeah.
And allow them to do it.
Give them the time.
And don't call performance management coaching.
Right. That's definitely, yes.
Well, thank you so much. Absolutely wonderful conversation. And thank you for coming down to the conference and sharing some of your knowledge and experience.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that does it for the Rebel HR podcast. Big thank you to our guests. Follow us on Facebook at Rebel HR Podcast, Twitter at Rebel HR Guy, or see our website at rebelhumanresources.com. The views and opinions expressed by Rebel HR Podcast are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any of the organizations that we represent. No animals were harmed during the filming of this podcast.
Baby.